Your characters are great, your dialogue is great, but your story drags on and is boring. In this video, I'll teach you how to make sure every scene feels important and keeps your audience hooked to the very end. Now, in a previous video, I covered how to introduce characters. You also need to have scenes that introduce your world and your story because they are characters in and of their own right. And everything you learn in that video also applies here with everything else. Now, you're going to want to set up the world, the tone, how and why things happen, and why your audience should care. If you do all that right, your audience is hooked, and we'll go over in the rest of this video how you keep them invested. Every scene has to be critical to the story, even if there is downtime and something seems mundane or seems unimportant. Underneath the surface, it is important to the story, and that's why it stays. Every now and again, you need to relieve the tension and give your audience a bit of breathing room while you are simultaneously expanding on your characters and their relationships and developing everything further. Now, every scene is its own contained story with a beginning, middle, and end. You want to have it so that the audience can watch or read just this scene and still get an experience out of it. They can still enjoy this standalone scene as is, like it is a story in and of itself. A good litmus test would be, can somebody experience this over YouTube Shorts and still enjoy it if it were a video, for example? A lot of it is going to be a text-based medium, but imagine it gets filmed, right? Can they watch it on YouTube Shorts and still get something out of it? It's not the full story, but it is its own contained story that is part of the larger overarching plot. A good rule of thumb is to begin a scene as late as possible and end a scene as early as possible. For example, if there is a big scene where something is going to happen in a boardroom, in a meeting, you don't want to start your scene 15 minutes before this meeting and just have people hanging out, passing the time, tapping their foot. Unless, they're having some important dialogue that's going to frame something, and the people who are actually present are sort of strategizing for before the other people get there type of thing, right? If it's just hanging out and waiting, don't start the scene. You can start your scene in the middle of the presentation or in the middle of the meeting when something is actually relevant, if that's what you want to do. Even worse, you wouldn't want to start this scene in the boardroom 30 or 45 minutes before the meeting when the janitor's going around wiping down the table and making sure that the floors are vacuumed and everything. The exception for something like that would be if the janitor overhears something important, something vital to the story, and it is going to become relevant later or become a big plot point. Now, that is the earliest that your story, or the latest that your story can be started. When it comes to this whole boardroom example, we don't need to see, the main point is that we don't need to see everybody awkwardly shuffle in one by one at the start, and they're waiting for each other, and then awkwardly say bye and part ways in the end and filter out of the room. Now, every scene needs some form of conflict or tension, right? And that tension can be from anything, even if it's small, even if it's like, will this character confess their love? Will these two people get into an argument? Will this character do something crazy and ruin an event? Or will the thing the audience wants to happen actually happen? Right? That's a big source of tension, is the waiting, the anticipation, the excitement. It doesn't always have to be overt fighting or anything like that. Now, it definitely can be fighting, it definitely can be arguing, and it can definitely be on a spectrum of surface level and deep down. It doesn't have to be actiony. It can be somebody, letting another person in on a deep, dark secret that the audience knows, but the other character doesn't as well, for example. A very important thing to remember, though, is, you're not going to want to start and end your scenes all the same way. You're not going to want your scenes to all feel too alike, and you are not going to want them to be the same length either, and stuff like that. You want them to be as different as possible and as fresh as possible at all times. If tension is a scale between 0 and 10, right, you don't want every scene to be a 10 out of 10 for tension, and you don't want any scene to be a 0 out of 10 for tension. 1 is perfectly fine, right? You want your tension level to go up and down, not quite like a sine wave, right? You can build up and then you can drop down, build up more, drop down, go to a base level, right? You can decompress at a 3 out of 10 for your tension, or even a 2. Then you can work your way up to like a spike at a 10 or a 9 or an 8. You can hang out in the middle. The whole thing is you want to hit every base, and you want it to be different types of tension, right? Like, is this a physical tension? Is this an emotional tension? Is it a sort of intellectual tension? Cover every single base you can, right? It doesn't matter if it's a fantasy, a war movie, a romance. Doesn't matter if it's a comic book. It could be a video game too. Use all the different types of tension you can, and use all of them to varying degrees at varying time. You want to build up. You want to make it as tense as possible, but you also want to give a bit of release so that, like the hedonic treadmill, people don't just adjust to an 8 out of 10, and 8 out of 10 becomes boring and nobody cares because it doesn't even feel tense to them. You want to give them a little bit of everything. By that same logic, a lot of your scenes should have different goals or reasons for being, right? Each scene could also have several goals, and maybe your character accomplishes some of them but fails in others. Now, the main thing is to let your characters and story grow and deepen over time. And just make sure that no matter what your scene is, it is important to the characters that your audience finds important. Like, if your audience cares about a character, the scene mattering to them will make the scene matter to the audience. So you're going to want to keep a sort of emotional connection there, and you want to filter everything through your characters. Now, that's all I have for today. As always, make sure to leave a comment down below with any questions you've got, or to let me know what I should cover next.